All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with Brendan Boylan. He is co-host of the Bayou Blitz with our own Bob Rose. Bob has, well, it's that time of the season. I totally get it because been there, done that, have all the awards and stuff because of it. He's got a Christmas presentation he has to be with for his daughter, which is totally understandable. But he will be on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night with Brendan. Brendan, how you doing? Thank you for filling in for Bob tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, I bring enough personality to mimic Bob. But we'll actually be on Thursday. I have some responsibilities on Wednesday. It's that time of year, like you said. So we're going to be pushing it back to Thursday night, and then back on December 21st, we'll hit it back to our normal Wednesday nights. But I'm great. You know, it's a fun week for Saints fans. Obviously, when you get to Falcons hate week and take on the Atlanta Falcons. There's a lot going on in the world with the Saints, and they haven't made my job with the Saints News Network writing easy at all this year. But nonetheless, it does make for some interesting storylines. I know we got some good ones to get to today.
Absolutely. I know you and Bob like to do a pregame and a halftime show during the broadcast. I pick on Bob all the time because I said this season, especially with some of these games, it's really tough to kind of do that instant analysis because I know I write a good, bad, and ugly after every game. And I know that after most games, I need a few minutes to kind of decompress so I can write something rational as opposed to the sheer emotion of the moment, especially when you're frustrated with what's going on. How hard is it to do the halftime show?
I think for me, it might be a little easier than for Bob. I think Bob would agree. Sometimes I'm the more optimistic or looking on the brighter side of things, glass half full kind of a guy.
Sure.
I'd say for me, my experience has made it a lot easier. Right, I've did 8 years of Big South Network, and then when the Big South merged with ESPN Plus, you know, when you start working for the big guys, there is no emotional attachment to things. Even though I was doing games for my alma mater, and then I ended up doing the NCAA tournament for soccer and all those things, you have to learn to kind of separate it. Even being a Saints fan growing up, when I came on way back when it was Saints News Radio, you could kind of be free and upset and angry and whatever. But as soon as it became Sports Illustrated, you got to kind of flip a switch a little bit. It doesn't mean you're not frustrated. I mean, at the end of the day, the writers, the guys in the press box, we're all fans of the sport. That's why we got attached to it enough to work it. But this is, and I've told Bob this too, you know, I'm 26. So I haven't experienced a whole lot of bad Saints football in my life. I've been a little spoiled. You know, I've had, it was the Drew Brees thing for what? I was like 8 or 9 years old.
That's
when Drew came to town. So I've always known Saints football to be high-powered offense, some years of really bad defense, and this year it's average at best defense and a really mediocre offense. I mean, it's been difficult in that aspect just to watch the games. But in terms of getting on the halftime, you got to bite your tongue a little bit, I think. I think Bob would be the first to tell you that as well. But it's hard when the team doesn't have an identity, a DNA, a culture, like all those things that made this team so special over the last 5 or 6 years. In 2 off seasons feels like it's completely gone. That's what's really difficult.
That's really a great point that you're bringing up, and boy, you're I'm going to date myself a good bit now, but you're about between my son and my daughter's age. My son
I'm used to it.
My son's 27, my daughter's 25. But I grew up. I go back to the days of Tulane Stadium. My dad took me to games at Tulane Stadium. And I go back to the early days in the Superdome, and John Meekum was the owner, and Archie Manning, and all those guys, and then Bum Phillips coming in, and so for me, the season hasn't been. It's frustrating, but I haven't been upset, or I haven't been like as emotional. One of the things I mentioned to Bob and a couple other people before, I'm kind of taken aback by the intense anger that's going on with Saints fans. And I should have known it because one of the points you brought up a few minutes ago, you're 26 years old. You grew up pretty much in the era of Breeze. You might have some memories of Aaron Brooks and Jim Haslett and stuff, but basically for almost 30 years, the Saints had been good. If you start 22 years of it, they've been really good. You start with 2000 and work your way to 2020, 20 years of pretty good football. Used to seeing high explosive offense, used to seeing great defense and things like that. The Ditka years are kind of even just a story for you. Going back even further to Jim Mora, those guys, that's NFL films for you. That's all that is.
Very literally. I told Jim Everett when we had him on the show not too long ago, I said, Jim, you're the first Saints quarterback I remember, but not because I was around to see it, but because I grew up watching the NFL films yearbooks. That is very literally for people my age. And you hop on social media, right? You talk about like Saints Twitter. And what is majority of Twitter? People my age or people between the ages of like 20 and 30. And that's all Saints fans know at that point is kind of like you alluded to. I have memories of Aaron Brooks, and people are split on Aaron Brooks. I, for one, am one of the people, and it's probably because I didn't get to see Archie, but I would make the argument that you could put Aaron Brooks as the second greatest quarterback in Saints history.
Statistically, you'd be right.
Statistically, you could absolutely make that argument. I'm used to seeing a guy with a big arm be able to chuck it down the field. I'm used to seeing Aaron do that. Drew, for a good portion of his career, was able to do that. And like you alluded to, some pretty good defenses. I mean, you look at from 2000 to 2020, if you want, and you look at the losing seasons the Saints had, and there's only a handful. There's a lot of 8-8s. There were some 7-9s, obviously, like 2012 and some of those really bad. We don't have to talk about the Browner days and the Jerry Spurrier days, right? Those were bad defenses, but nonetheless, the Saints have always been a pretty good football team for me. In my time, and for a lot of people on Saints Twitter. So there is a lot of anger, and a lot of people don't understand that people your age, people my dad's age, you're kind of used to it. This isn't the worst of the worst. Yeah, it's bad football, but this isn't the worst of the worst. I have to admit it too. Like, I'm a Charlotte Hornets fan. I'm a Charlotte Hornets season ticket holder. I'm used to bad basketball. So like this is nothing compared to some of the things I've seen in other sports and been a fan of and been a part of. So yeah, it stinks. But at the same time, it's not as bad as it could be. I think, like I alluded to, the one thing I'm concerned about from the analyst chair is what the hell happened to this locker room? And it's not that the guys aren't tight knit, but it doesn't feel the same way that it did. And I think a lot of that has to do with losing Drew and losing Sean back-to-back years. Yeah. But it's been, you expect a little part of it to be gone. Maybe this much. But the fact that it's like this much, it's definitely concerning.
Yeah, you mentioned Sean and Drew leaving the building back-to-back years, but I think Malcolm Jenkins being gone from the locker room, Teron Armstead, even Marcus Williams, you lost a lot of veteran leadership, and it created a void in this locker room. I see guys out there, and this is what I was really trying to get at when we're talking about, and I've seen more Saints teams. I see guys out there trying to make plays. You look at Taylor, Alontae Taylor. You see him when he tries to tackle, he's trying to strip at the ball as he's making a tackle a lot of times. You see guys grabbing the ball and trying to pull it free instead of just wrapping up and making a tackle. Maybe the guy pulls him another couple of yards for that first down. So you see things that are happening out there, excuse me, but at the same time, it's not clean football. It's not somebody taking everybody on the sidelines and going, listen, this is the way we've got to do it. You haven't had a players-only meeting in that locker room where the closest you got was Alvin Kamara taking the meeting and saying, look, this isn't Saints football. Too many guys getting comfortable losing, all these things. You're not seeing what you normally saw from Saints teams where there was leadership that stepped up and held people accountable. And even Sean Payton was holding people accountable. And it's like, you don't see that from the coaches. You don't see it from the players. So you got a really flat team that shows up, makes some plays, but makes a lot of mistakes. Doesn't finish games, doesn't finish drives that you want to see. So I agree with you on that. And it gets to be frustrating, especially for fans who are used to seeing, well, somebody's going to make a play. Somebody's going to do something at some point in this game. Now, the Saints had a bye this week. And, well, before I say this, before we get into this, I wanted to pass this along real quick. I did get some information on Sean Williams. For those of you who may not remember or may not know, Sean obviously has been on the show for a couple of months. He had a fire in his apartment, had burns on his back, on his left hand, on his left leg. Originally, it was reported from his old boss, Kevo, that Sean was going to have his hands, his left hand's fingers and thumb amputated. I found out from his son they were able to save his fingers and thumbs. So that is great news. He is still in the hospital. He's not in ICU, but he has trouble breathing on his own. And this is probably due to smoke inhalation. So he's a tube down his throat still. They remove it occasionally to see if he can get enough lung capacity to breathe. And he's not developing it. So he has to sleep with this in his mouth. Yeah. And it makes it hard for him to talk. His son had a conversation with him in the hospital, face to face. He didn't lose everything, thank God. It was a fire contained mostly in the kitchen, if I remember the story correctly. So he still has his bedroom and most of his belongings and stuff. I was worried about that. But he doesn't know where the fire started, and he really doesn't remember anything when the fire was going on. He remembers waking up to the smoke, and then that's it. He doesn't know anything else other than that. So obviously he hasn't been home. I'm ask all you guys to please continue to keep Sean in his prayers. As soon as he can breathe on his own, he'll be released from the hospital, and we're going to get him on the show and have him talk to you guys and everything. Just keep praying for him. And as I get more information, I'll pass that along to everybody. So thanks for indulging me for a minute. I just want to give everybody the latest update that I had. Brendan, I was going to ask you, Jeff Duncan had a story come out this weekend. Even on a bye week, we can't avoid Saint Splash reports.
Of course.
On Saturday, it comes out that Sean Payton is looking to coach next year, and one of the teams he's looking to coach at the top of his list is the New Orleans Saints. First off, how do you take a story like that?
I think first is we all knew Sean was going to be coming back to coaching. If you want to call it a sabbatical, that might be the best way to describe what happened with him retiring, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
He needed a year off, whether it's to clear your head, whether it's, to do it as long as Sean has, and you got to remember, not just as a head coach, all the years as an assistant, all recently remarried, kids are getting older, going off to college, doing their own thing, having their own careers. Sometimes it is good just to take some time and figure out what you want to do. And I think we all knew it was just kind of a sabbatical, extended leave. When it comes to Jeff's story, the way I take it is, and the way that I read it was, he asked Jeff asked some guys that were close to Sean and whatnot, hey, Sean's going to be coming back. If you could rank where he's going to go, where would you rank some of these teams? And for one or two guys, Saints were number one. Personally, I don't think Sean's coming back. That's just a personal thought. However, it does give some hope to Saints fans. And the issue that I have with that is it's really hard to promote your defensive coordinator to head coach and a year later be like, you know what? Good job, kid. We're gonna go back with the old guy. It's like, and I brought up being a Charlotte Hornets fan. I'll make a great comparison for you NBA fans. The Hornets had Steve Clifford 4 years ago, fired him, brought in James Borrego after 4 years, fired him, and brought Steve Clifford back. That's awkward. And the way that I describe that to people is you broke up with your girlfriend, got with a new girl, and then broke up with her and went back to your ex. Like that would be the very same situation for New Orleans. And is it fair to DA? Probably not. Has DA had a really tough time with the locker room? Has DA had a really tough time winning over the fan base? Yes. All those things are true. I just don't think Sean's coming back. And this is what's going to be intriguing over, the summer is, the Cowboys have kind of turned it around, but in the early goings, it was, well, Sean's always said that's his dream job to go coach the Cowboys. I don't think they're going to make a move at this point unless they just blow up at the end or in the playoffs just get blown out. Justin Herbert and the comparisons to Drew Brees over the years have been really tight. I know Drew's been out there to hang out with Justin, see him, and Drew spoke really high of Justin. So I could see Sean going to a place like the Chargers, a team that was supposed to be an AFC sleeper that has really just stunk it up this year. Sean going in, young quarterback, lots of young talent out there, see what he can do. And Lamar Jackson has been a guy that Sean has openly spoke about and how much he admires what Lamar's able to do. Lamar's a free agent. I think he's going back to Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
I think everybody thinks he's going back to Baltimore. But on the off chance that he doesn't, could Sean go team up with him? Could Sean go team up with a guy like Tom Brady? If Tom Brady leaves Tampa and decides to go for another year at 46 years old, I just don't think the Saints are at the top of the list at this point. I think he's taken the Saints as far as he can, and he's ready for a new adventure, if you will, or a new challenge.
Yeah, I equated it to okay, so in this show we use a lot of music titles as the episodes. Backstabbers is an old OJ song from the 70s. I equate Sean coming back to the Saints like David Lee Roth coming back to Van Halen. Okay. He can come back, but it's not the same. Even just being that year off, the team is going to be different. It's got to be different. I think one of the things that we're seeing, because I tell people this all the time. The Saints started 5-2 last year, but they finished 4-6. Granted, one of those losses was the infamous Dolphins game where half the team was in COVID and so forth. But they finished 4-6, and they started this year 4-9. There's something about this team that it's time to reset, and it's time to start bringing in fresh talent. That's not to say the 2017 class is done, but the 2018, 19, and 20 draft classes were really designed to get Drew that last ring. It wasn't really designed to build long-term success. And I think that's where they need to start looking now. It's time to get younger at a lot of key positions. It's time to start moving on from some of these veterans. You see a Pete Warner, you see a Caden Ellis, but I'm not trying to push, Cam Jordan and DeMario Davis out the door, but it is time to start looking at some of these younger guys to come in, clean up your salary cap mess, accumulate those draft picks, high draft picks, and really try and build this team into being a long-term contender. So, you can't do that with David Lee Roth back leading the group, because now people are going to be expecting eruption. You really got me running with the devil, all that stuff. They're expecting that David Lee Roth wearing the assless chaps and the whole bit, so it's, I think that that ship has sailed. I think Sean is throwing that out, and Mickey is promoting it to an extent with Duncan, because I think they're trying to drive up the cost of Sean Payton. Hey, if nobody really takes Sean seriously that he wants to come to the team, or they think the Saints are crazy for wanting 2 firsts or a first and a second or whatever, he could go back, and then you're going to be stuck with picking, some hot assistant, maybe going to the college ranks. You're not going to get this proven coach who can turn your team around. And I like what you said about the Chargers, because that's been my team I wanted him to go to forever. The Chargers are the LA Clippers to the Rams being, well, until this year, the Lakers, the ugly stepsister. If you want to build a fan support, and I think Sean feels that way for his ego. Look, I saved the Saints from Katrina. I built all these consecutive years of sellouts. If I'm going to build a team and build a fan base, what greater place to do that in the Los Angeles market with the Chargers that, there's more visitors there than there are home fans. That's a great thing to appeal to him. And Dallas, you look at that team, you're like, okay, how much did Sean really contribute to that? Are they getting them over the hump? Or is this really Jerry's team? Dallas is already the team that, people just waiting to be fans of again. So I really like that analogy. So
I think Dallas is interesting too, because you kind of brought it up subtly there with Jerry Jones, but Sean's a guy who needs control, and I don't think Jerry's willing to give up any of that control. So as much as I think Sean wants to eventually end up in Dallas, until Jerry is retired or has found his way out the door other ways, I just don't see it. I don't see it happening there.
Right.
I like your David Lee Roth comparison. I actually got to see him with Aerosmith a couple years ago. Not Aerosmith, yeah, him with Van Halen and Aerosmith together at a festival, and that was a lot of fun to see a lot of guys that, yes, I know I'm young, I shouldn't know who they are, I shouldn't know these songs, but to be able to see Van Halen, Aerosmith, Lenny Kravitz, Elton John, like that was once in a lifetime. So that was really cool.
For sure.
But that's a really good comparison. I know there's some younger people that are like, "What?" But
yeah,
that was a great comparison.
Well, and I've seen Van Halen with David Lee Roth in their prime, and a good friend of mine went and saw Van Halen with David Lee Roth when he came back. Michael Anthony wasn't there. It was Wolfgang Van Halen,
Same,
on bass. And I've always said, Michael Anthony was the secret weapon for the background vocals for Van Halen. I don't know what it was, but he knew how to make those background vocals really sing. And he noticed it. My friend John noticed it too. He's like, yeah, David Lee Roth was kind of not quite the same, kind of rambling, and the background vocals just weren't there. It didn't sound like Van Halen. The guitar was there and the drums were there, but it just didn't sound like it to him. So I totally get that. But yeah, it's, going back to Sean, I really think that he is trying to drive up the price for the Saints. And I think the Saints want that price driven up. I don't know if Dennis Allen makes it next year. I was about 80-20 that he was going to be here next year until the Tampa game. And this weekend, watching the 49ers just demolish the Buccaneers offense with a Mr. Irrelevant at quarterback, just take apart that secondary, really angered me more, because the Saints obviously let them off the hook. And, Dennis Allen being just a little more aggressive. If you're going to, I don't mind throwing the ball on 3rd and 1 if you're going to run the ball and go for it anyway on 4th and 1. Those kind of plays I felt were the difference between us winning and losing. And I felt there was a lot of Jim Mora in Dennis Allen. as far as coaching not to lose. Bum Phillips coached that same way, playing not to lose. Let your defense win the game for you. Let your special teams win the game for you. And that's something I think the fans of your generation aren't used to seeing. They're used to seeing Sean go for it on fourth down, playing to win, going for the kill, instead of surviving a game, winning a game by a last-second field goal. That's why I don't get the anger, because I'm like, I've seen this team. I've seen these games before. This is Jim Mora towards the end of his tenure. This is Bum Phillips, most of his tenure with the Saints. The defense had to be elite for you to win, because the offense was going to win the game for you. It was always going to come down to Morton Anderson making those last-second field goals.
I think the big thing is this, and I said it on Sunday with Bob in the pregame and at halftime, was the biggest thing for me was I needed to see, and this is a very young reference, but I needed to see the Saints have that dog in the game. I needed to see it because I hadn't seen it all year, whether that was the players, the coaching staff, what have you, and it wasn't there. Kind of like what you alluded to, there was no kill shot. There was no let's just go win the game. And a lot of people were mad at Mark, on that second down for stepping out a yard short. I said on the Bayou Blitz last week, I said, listen, the guy has an MCL issue. He might have came back a little too early. He had injured it earlier in the drive. The Saints trotted him back out there. Something was clearly wrong. I'm not very mad at Mark for stepping out of bounds because of the injury. I'm different than you. Well, I mean, you said if they went for it on fourth down, but throwing the ball on third down, that was a page right out of Sean's offensive playbook. How many times have we seen that exact thing ran? Drew Brees takes a snap, half a step, quick slant, Mike Thomas, first down. We've seen that a gazillion times over the last, 3 or 4 years. Here's my problem. You ran it with Andy Dalton and Marquez Callaway. And I have nothing against Marquez Callaway, especially after what he did last year in a pretty good year. But you mean to tell me the quarterback that some people love, some people hate? I think there's a little bit more of not hate towards Andy Dalton, but more hate that Jameis isn't playing. And then you got a receiver that went from first on your depth chart. He's now like fourth or fifth. I don't like that play call. And then if you really trust your defense to win a football game, Dennis Allen, and you've been with this defense and you know the guys by heart, why aren't you going for it on fourth down? Right. Yeah, Brady's got to go. At that point, he's got to go like 60 yards. But trust your defense. You got Taysom Hill. Mark got banged up. You got Alvin Kamara. You could run a quarterback sneak. You could do a lot of different things. I just didn't see that killer instinct from the Saints. And that's what's been frustrating for the entire year. Exactly what you said. People my age are used to seeing, well, let's just go win the game. Let's go win it. And for that to be gone, completely gone from the DNA of this entire team, it's maybe more disheartening than it is frustrating. You even look at a guy like Alvin Kamara, and Kamara looks almost in it like not interested. And there's a clear disconnect between whether it's DA in the team, whether it's Pete Carmichael in the team. The defense actually hasn't been that bad this year. There's been moments they've been bad. But for the most part, the defense has kept them in a lot of games. And the offense has had a plethora of injuries, skill positions. Offensive line doesn't get talked about enough with the injuries. Obviously, quarterback. Kamara missed time. Ingram's missed time. I mean, it's been every position. Troutman, Jawan's missed games. I kid you not, every position has been hurt at some point. But there is no reason that this Saints team should be struggling to put up 14 points a game.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And to your point, I don't see Dennis. I just don't see the Saints cutting Dennis Allen loose as a head coach. And this is why. The old wives' tale, if you will, is coaches get 3 years.
Yeah.
To inject their DNA into the team. Bob and I have talked so many times about how Jameis Winston was not Dennis Allen's quarterback, and he knew it from the jump. And as soon as there was an opportunity to cut him loose, he was going to. So I could see the Saints going, okay, well, DA, listen, you had an injury-riddled season. You didn't have your quarterback. We're going to give you another year. But it's just another year where all those guys you'd mentioned, the Cameron Jordans, the DeMario Davises, even the Ramcheks of the world, the Alvin Kamaras of the world, these guys that are now considered veterans, they're getting another year older, another year out of their prime.
Yeah.
At what point, after all those years, you said it so perfectly, Allen. You had all those years, 18, 19, 20, 20. Those years were built for Drew to go win another ring, not just in the draft, but how they worked the salary cap.
Yeah.
How they built rosters, how they didn't completely overhaul and rebuild the roster, but patched the roster.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden, you're going into this offseason with no clear answer at quarterback. You're going into this offseason with no first-round pick. You're going into this offseason with – and yes, I know everybody listening that's about to give me hell for this. Yes, I know that Mickey Loomis and that – front office staff has found a magical way to get under the salary cap every year. But you have salary cap issues.
Mm-hmm.
So with all of that said, Allen, if the Saints was my sales pitch to you to come in and be a head coach, and you see questions at quarterback, aging superstars, no true identity, salary cap issues, and no first round draft pick, why is that an attractive job to take?
Exactly.
And that's another reason DA will be back, because the Saints job for the first time in a really long time is not an attractive job to take.
No, they're a small market team too. That's the other issue you have. You're a small market team, so there's limited opportunities as far as being a corporate spokesman, making side deals for big corporations and things like that. You just don't have that here. That's just a reality of this market compared to a city like New York or Los Angeles or Dallas or any of those other teams. Miami, exactly. So, I've felt that too, that they're giving DA Dennis Allen at least 2 years, if not 3, because Dicker got 3 years. And it was clear after year 1, Dicker was a mess. He was not the guy that they should have had. But they still gave him 3 seasons. I think one of the things, and Anna asked this, what's the deal with Sean Payton and draft picks? Sean's under contract still with the Saints. So if another team wants to sign him as a head coach, hire him as a head coach, they have to get, number one, permission from the Saints. But number two, the Saints can demand compensation. And, for the most part, yeah, and they will. And most people seem to think if you use John Gruden, that was probably the first coach I've ever seen traded for draft picks. John Gruden kind of is a base. You can see the Saints demanding certain picks. And one of the picks that people most typically say that they want is a first rounder because we don't have one. So that's your step one. You want to get at least a first round pick this year. You may not get it. They may demand that, you can get a first round from us in 2024. We want to see what we get with Sean, because there's something else that goes into this that most teams may or may not think about, but I think about it. Very, very few coaches do better their second time around. You think about Mike Ditka, for example, Hank Stram, 2 guys from the Saints, Bum Phillips, 3 coaches then that the Saints hired that were second go-rounds for these coaches. Yes, you get the Dick Vermeils, you get the
Andy Reid.
Andy, thank you. I was trying to think of a current coach. Bill Parcells, but even Bill Parcells, 2 Super Bowls with the Giants, got to the Super Bowl with the Patriots, got to the AFC Championship with the Jets, got to the playoffs with the Cowboys. You could see a decline, each year, or each stop he made. The most part, these guys really don't see the level of success they had with their first team. And the others, especially in an era of the salary cap, where you have a rookie cap for young players, and you have a very limited salary cap where you have a small percentage of players up here who are your superstars get all the money, and the bottom half of your roster has to be made up of undrafted free agents or players that are working on rookie, undrafted free agent kind of contracts. Not big deals. You're not getting those cheap veterans that you're paying a few $1 million to. Those guys they get squeezed out. They really do. And I think that's why one of the reasons you see so much terrible football right now is because the only teams that are doing extremely well are the teams that are relatively healthy. And their core group isn't eating up most of their cap, like the Eagles. Whereas a team like the Rams are terrible. They have no draft picks, and they've got a lot of players, key veterans, that are eating up that cap. So, they get a couple injuries, and they're a four-win team just like the Saints. So that's the only thing that I'm worried about when it comes to negotiating for Sean Payton. Is a team going to be willing to give up those high draft picks, mortgaging the future, because they think they're not a quarterback, but a head coach away from making a deep playoff run, possible Super Bowl run?
Well, there's windows, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it with the Saints from 17 to 20, or 21, if you want to make that comparison, is rookie deals. You talk about the 2017 draft class being as special as they were. The Saints were able to get away with, rework some things, get some of those veterans paid without having to pay the Ramcheks of the world yet, the Camaras, the Lattimores, and now you're paying for it, right? And that's where the Eagles are at, is they're going to have this stretch while Jalen Hurts is still on his rookie deal where they can go get it. And if they don't, we'll see what happens. I mean, the Chiefs are going to run into that issue. Like we're at the tail end of those Chief years too. And you saw what they had to do this offseason and offloading Tyreek Hill. That's the NFL game now, though. Is how long can we extend success on rookie contracts? And now you're seeing the end of it for the Saints, where all these veterans have all this money. And Bob and I talked about this on Wednesday, just briefly. It's a huge offseason topic, is what do the Saints do with Michael Thomas? What do the Saints do with Michael Thomas? And I said, as easily as possible, it's an untradeable contract. You have Michael Thomas. Whether you like it or not, that's what's going to happen. And that's what's going to happen with a ton of these Saints players. As the more and more that they extend these contracts and Mickey Loomis works his magic, the more untradeable these deals become. And you got to just ride it out. So, Allen, I liked what you said at the start of the show is, this is a team where it's like, well, do you rebuild or do you not? Is it a complete rebuild? Is it not a complete rebuild? And for so many years, it's been a patch job, right? You haven't had to replace the tire yet. There's a nail in it. You're able to do the little patch, keep on trucking. Well, at this point, the nail's in a spot where it's just about, irreparable. Yeah. So is it time to put a new tire on the car? And at this point, it's not just one tire. There's like 3 tires. You're holding on with one good one. Yeah. So at what point are you willing to just replace everything? And I think this is a good offseason for the Saints. Do I want to see DeMario leave? No. Do I want to see Cameron Jordan leave? No. I want Cam to be a lifetime Saint. I think he's a lifer. I think he wants to be a lifer. But at the same time, for guys of that caliber that's given the Saints so many good years, if they want to go chase a chip, I think of anybody, they're the most deserving to go chase a chip. And I wouldn't be upset with them. I don't think the Saints would either, because they'd be able to offload those contracts. The Saints are going to be in a really, really weird spot in the upcoming years.
Yeah, and unlike a lot of franchises, well, and I say that, I know there's people who are loyal to players, but this particular franchise really grasps players. Yeah, it's about the name on the side of the jersey, the logo, and about the colors, but it's also about the name on the back. And you were obviously not born yet, but I was there for the end of the Moore years when they started letting those players go. The Dome Patrol was broken up piece by piece. Pat Swilling went to the Raiders, the Lions and the Raiders. Sam Mills went to Carolina. Vaughn Johnson, a lot of people don't remember this, finished his career with the Eagles. And of course, Ricky Jackson. It's funny you mentioned, Cam Jordan going somewhere to win that Super Bowl. Ricky Jackson went to the 49ers to get his Super Bowl ring. So it's hard for fans to accept that. It's why there's so much anger about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson being gone, so much anger about Marcus Williams being gone. Seeing those players leave, it's really tough on Saints fans because they can't form that attachment yet for that new guy. But at the same time, they're also upset that players who are taking up a lot of cap dollars aren't producing. So they want to get rid of those guys too. So yeah, it's really tough. I know you got to go, Brendan, but I wanted to ask you one last question before you jet. You're young. You don't remember a lot of those painful Falcons losses. You lived in an era where Sean Payton really just beat the Falcons religiously.
Yeah.
How do you see this game playing out with Atlanta? Do you see this? Because if they win this game, they now have the lead in the regular season matchups. They have one postseason matchup. But they'll have the lead in the regular season, all-time series lead in the regular season matchups. How do you see this game playing out?
Well, first, I just want to point out what you said with I'm used to the Saints just beating up on the Falcons. I went to Flowery Branch High School. Flowery Branch, Georgia is where the Falcons training camp is. So growing up, that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. The training camp was right across the street from the high school. So it was a lot of fun to be able to walk in high school after a Sunday and the Saints beating the Falcons. It was great. My folks still live out there. So every now and again, I'm back in Falcons country, and it's interesting for sure. But no, I think the key here is you got two teams that are still trying to figure themselves out. I got to give the Falcons props, though, because I think myself and a lot of other analysts, whether they were local or national media, had the Falcons being the worst team in football. And they've actually had stretches of being a decent football team, even though they don't really have a key guy. And their key guy, or the guy that I thought would be the key guy, Kyle Pitts, had a really disappointing fantasy season. Just want to throw out there that I told none of you. I never published an article. I told you guys to draft Kyle Pitts. So don't come after me for that fantasy advice. I hope all of you made your playoffs, by the way. But no, I mean, even with Mariota, who's going to be sitting on the bench this week for Ritter, I think Mariota actually had an okay year. Good enough to be a starter again? Probably not, but quality enough to prove to be a really good backup in the league, and that's what I think Mariota is at this point. Yeah, he'll whether it's back in Atlanta or whether he goes somewhere else, like a team like New Orleans who needs a veteran backup. Mariota's going to get paid. I think he had an okay year. This game's going to come down to. This really hurts me to say this. It's going to come down to the team to score 20 points because both these offenses are bad. Ritter's going to get his first NFL start. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news here, Saints fans, but you look at the history of rookie quarterbacks to make their debut in the Superdome, and it doesn't look that good for the Saints. I mean, RG3 is the first one that pops up in my head, But Ritter's not going to have it easy because the Saints are hungry to play some Saints football. The Who Dat Nation knows this rivalry, and regardless of how bad these teams are, right? It doesn't matter if they're both really good one year, both really bad. One team's good, one team's bad, what have you. You're going to get the very best out of the other team. The Saints are at home. The Saints have a lot to prove. They had both teams were off last week. I just think it comes down to whoever can score points. I don't think the Falcons defense is super good. I don't think the Saints defense is super good. But both those offenses are really bad. Alvin Kamara's had some really nice career days against the Falcons. I'd love to see him get back on track. But I ultimately have the Saints winning the football game. It's kind of like a consolation prize at this point in the season. Mm-hmm. But I do have the Saints winning the football game ugly. I'll take the Saints like 20-14. And I also want to throw out here, because we talked about it before we got on. So pre-show about some of my favorite Saints Falcons memories. Obviously, being there in Flowery Branch, I got to see the Saints in Atlanta a lot. So my first ever game in person was the 2009 season, the last regular season win. That was a weird Falcons team. They started Chris Redman at quarterback. Mm-hmm. I don't remember who was at running back, but it was like a backup quarterback, backup running back. The Saints barely won that football game. It was a 26-23 victory for New Orleans. I was there when Jimmy Graham didn't break, but
bent the goalpost.
Yeah, bent the goalpost. I was gonna say bring down. That's not right either.
Yeah.
And for about 10 minutes, I'm just like, what the heck's going? We didn't know what was going on. What's going on? Why are they not kicking an extra point? Is something being reviewed? And then it clicked. Oh, the field goal post is like that.
Yeah.
So that was a good one. In terms of being able to cover games, the Thanksgiving Day game, Shy Tuttle, that was fun. That was fun. The Saints clinched the division, right? And Shy Tuttle gave Who Dat Nation a meme or a GIF for forever. Michael Turner. So I'm trying to think who would have replaced Turner in that game.
Probably
Jarius Norwood might have been there still.
Boy, you really got me wondering. I know it's probably an old player, but because Steven Jackson wasn't there yet.
Not yet.
No, he replaced Michael Turner. The thing I remember most about that 2009 Saints Falcons game, Reggie Bush had a big touchdown in it, but the game-saving tackle by Jonathan Vilma.
Yep.
Just to seal that. Yeah, yep. He just perfect textbook. Hit him, wrapped him up, drove him away from the sticks.
You're going to look that up to see who that running back was, aren't you?
I am.
Before I get off here, I don't blame you at all.
I'm looking it up just to see who this guy is, because you would think I would remember this. Yeah, Michael Turner was a starter. But let's see. God, John Abraham was on that team. I forgot all about him.
Yes, he was. Very underrated.
Yeah.
I'm going to beat you to it, or I'm going to try to at least. Hey, ironically, that game was on December 13th.
Was it?
Today, yeah. How about that?
Yeah, you're right. Jarius Norwood. Jarius Norwood would have been the player, because I know it's not Vernon Haynes. So Jarius Norwood.
Jason Snelling.
Okay.
Jason Snelling and Jarius Norwood split carries in that game.
Oh, Aaron Stecker finished his career with the Falcons. Wow. Stecker goes back to, he was a Tampa guy for a while. Then he went to the Saints under Hazlitt, and then he finished his career with the Falcons. But
I think he had a Sean Payton year. I think he was on a Sean Payton team.
He was on the Sean Payton
Maybe
team.
07 was his last year in New Orleans.
Yes, because they started using him as a third down back and also as a kick returner. In fact, he had a kick return for a touchdown, if I remember right, against the Buccaneers in 07. So that sounds about right. But yeah, I go back obviously a little bit further than you with Falcons games. I go back to Big Ben in 78. And then 79 opening day with the punt that goes over, the snap that goes over the head of Russell Oakslaben, and he throws this lane pass right into the arms of a Falcons linebacker to win overtime. So a lot of painful losses. And then going back to 91. You don't want to
talk about the 90s playoff game?
Yeah, I was getting ready to say the 91 season, you destroy Atlanta in Fulton County Stadium. The rematch in the Dome Hebert's hurt, so Steve Walsh comes in. It's a Sunday night game. It's funny, we're talking about Dennis Allen not winning games, not playing to win, but playing not to lose. Once again, Jim Mora did that, played not to lose, tried to get conservative, run the clock out, maybe kick a field goal. They didn't get the first down they needed, punted the ball, and Atlanta went down the field, kicked the field goal to tie it, and then won in overtime in 91. So then the rubber match game becomes the playoff game. Bobby Abreu looks great in the first half, totally shits the bed in the second half. I mean, it was just and I can still see Michael Haynes scoring those touchdowns over Calvin Nicholson and just that, and Deion Sanders doing his strut and too legit to quit and that whole bit. That's why I don't like MC Hammer to this day. But and then the Falcons, unfortunately, we beat them in 94 in the Georgia Dome. It's one of those games that was so quiet. You could hear Sam Mills calling out the defense and calling out the Falcons' offensive plays over the television broadcast because there's nobody in the stands. And Michael Haynes has a revenge game against the Falcons, but it was the last win the Saints have against the Falcons for the next 6 years. So the Falcons get a 10-game winning streak out of that. And they already had a 7-game winning streak in the 70s. So, for Sean Payton to not only win it, because I think that there's only 54 wins for the Saints. And I think Sean Payton has 24 of them. So that's almost half of all Saints wins against the Falcons just from Sean Payton. You really got to see the golden age of this rivalry, a true rivalry for us. It's just been painful.
Yeah, I got to see a lot of good ones. I got to see Drew put on a lot of shows as well. So it's definitely been fun. It's been fun to cover as well. And I mean, you want to talk about one just to kind of end my little part on the show is
absolutely.
We'll talk about the fact that, how about the first game of the season this year? Like, I know it's been a long year, Saints fans, but Jameis coming back and just going absolute, I don't even know. Him and Jarvis Landry just took it to a completely different level. Michael Thomas looks like Michael Thomas again. That was fun. And Jameis gave an A+ post-game interview as well. He's so funny. He doesn't even try to be funny. I don't think he's going to get another shot in New Orleans. I think he got the short end of the stick, but I really hope he succeeds wherever he goes because he's a good guy, good heart, really funny type of guy.
Yeah, it's not a good fit for him here.
It was with Sean.
Yeah, it probably would have worked with Sean, but not with Dennis Allen. I think what Dennis Allen is looking to build is something close to what Tennessee is doing. I think that's ultimately where Dennis Allen wants to go with this team. And I know that's also going to be hard for a lot of younger Saints fans to recognize because they want to see basically the 2011 and 2018 Saints, but with a stronger arm quarterback and more big plays. And you're just not going to see that. You're going to see a grinded out, at least if Dennis Allen gets to do what he wants to do, a grinded out power running game with the quarterback making short throws to extend drives, maybe some touchdown passes, but it's really going to be built around a rushing attack, probably a 3-headed rushing attack too.
Jimmy G is a perfect quarterback for New Orleans. If that's what they want to do. Not sorry.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I've been calling out Garoppolo for a while, and I know a lot of people are like, I hate that guy. But he is a Ryan Tannehill kind of quarterback for this team. He needs to have a lot of offensive weapons, a great offensive line. You look at Penning, the guy they drafted in the first round this year that they burnt that pick for. He fits what I think Dennis Allen wants. A physical, mean, attitude, aggressive kind of offensive lineman. It's going to punish you in the running game. And I think that's where they want to go with this. And Kamara's got a place for this. Kamara is going to be that scat back, throw it quick to the flat. But the amount of times they're trying to run the ball up the middle and really want to run it off tackle and stuff like that, that's where they want to get the running back in the draft. They want that bruiser, that guy who's going to beat on the defense. Because I think, and you're seeing this year across the league, because we've been so enamored with the pass that we have smaller defensive linemen, smaller linebackers, who the emphasis on this is speed. You can even see it in the type of pads they wear today, small, compact pads, that if you do a power offense, that speed's negated because these guys are getting beat up on. And I think that's what Allen is foreseeing. This is where we can go with in the future. Whether he's going to live to see that happen, I don't know. But I think that's what his vision was, what he sold Mickey Loomis on, and why they got the players they got in the draft.
Yeah, no, and I think it's going to be some getting used to for New Orleans Saints fans of young, but I can definitely see that being the way of Dennis Allen. They got to find a running mate for Alvin Kamara, though. I don't think Ingram's going to be back. And unfortunately, that might be an awful last moment in the NFL, but it could very well be Ingram's final moment in the NFL. Keep an eye on, though. Eno Benjamin got waived, and the Saints put in a waiver claim for him the first time he was cut. I did see the Saints put in a waiver claim for him again. And he's a pretty talented guy out in Arizona. He definitely saved my butt in fantasy a couple of weeks.
Well, I agree with you. I think that's a must for them. But thank you, Brendan. Brendan, real quick, because I always ask Bob this question: what are y'all going to talk about on Thursday's show?
We've had some conversations with a couple guys about coming on, trying to confirm some guys. But I think the biggest thing is, over the last 4 weeks, obviously New Orleans is not going to make the playoffs. Or if they do, it's going to be a Christmas miracle. 'Tis the season, right? And we're going to talk about what's important these last 4 weeks, what Saints fans should be excited to see over the last 4 weeks, and really what direction does this team go, and what do you need to see to have any sort of good feeling going into the offseason, because it is a dark, confusing time for the New Orleans Saints, and they haven't had to really see a time like this in the last, like we talked about, 20-something years. So what do we need to see over these last 4 weeks to instill some confidence going into the offseason, whether you be a fan, an analyst, and what have you?
Okay, well, good. And it's Thursday night this time, not Wednesday night. So, guys, it's a sister broadcast of ours. I encourage everyone to check out the Bayou Blitz this Sunday. Brendan and Bob do a pregame before the broadcast of the game. They do a halftime show. Both of them, they can see that on Facebook, I believe. But
correct.
Can they also see it on YouTube?
Yep, YouTube, Saints News Network on YouTube. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's right there at BT Boylan. It's streamed to my Twitter straight. I'll plug a couple other things. Like I said, Instagram, Twitter, at BT Boylan. Follow all my work with the Saints News Network covering the New Orleans Saints. If you're interested in some other things that I'm doing, just give me a follow. Got a lot of exciting things coming up in the future, and gonna try to get back into some of the filmmaking for some of you guys that have followed me in the past. You can see some of the trophies behind me. Gonna try to win a couple more for some films. So we got some really exciting things going on.
All right, I've been trying to read all broadcasts. What is that pennant that you got? Is that your
Gardner Webb University? Yeah,
Gardner Webb. Okay,
my alma mater. I called games there. I was their radio voice for almost 8 years. Did ESPN for them for almost 8 years, and then I made a documentary about their trip to the NCAA tournament, and got some of those trophies behind me for it. North Carolina Filmmaker of the Year. So shout out to the film, The Dancing Bulldogs. It's like 2 years old now, which is crazy, but shout out to all my guys that worked on that. Still really proud of that one, and excited to get working on some new stuff too.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Yeah, I went to that university down the road over there in Lafayette. It was USL when I was there. It's now UL Lafayette. But Yeah, that I know who Gardner Webb is. I kept looking at it going, that's not View. I can't read the words, but it's not View. So anyway, Brennan, thank you for filling in for Bob tonight. I really appreciate this, and I'm going to have to get you and Bob both on this show one time
Oh,
together.
that's dangerous. That's dangerous.
No, it will get like a mini Bayou Blitz in the show. So, but I love the guests that you guys get. It's a great show. It's different from ours, which is a good thing. So I really appreciate you staying. I know you were only going to stay for a half hour, and I kept you for an hour.
Hey,
So
I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to see some familiar faces in the chat too. So for all you guys that have
absolutely.
tuned into both, we really appreciate you. For you guys who haven't tuned into both, tune into us on Thursday night and then back on Wednesday the 21st.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brendan, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Alan. We'll see you soon. And if I don't see you before the holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
You too. You too. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Y'all were asking me earlier. Calvin, I think you were one of them, and a couple others asked me about Sean. I kind of gave an update for Sean, and I'm really mad I didn't have my good camera here. It's still at the office, so you can't see any of the damn highlights behind me. But it's all Saints Falcons highlights. Sean, he's still in the hospital. He's not in ICU anymore. He is conscious. He did not have his fingers and thumb amputated like they thought they were going to have to take them. He was actually able to, they were able to save those. I talked to his son. His son has been in the hospital room with him. Sean can talk. Sean can, is awake, alert, but he has a tube down his throat. He is having trouble breathing on his own, probably from all the smoke inhalation that he had from the fire. He did not lose all his possessions in the fire. It sounds like the fire was contained to the kitchen, but it generated a lot of smoke. According to Sean's son, Sean remembers the fire waking him up, but he does not remember much after that. He has no idea how he got out of the apartment or anything like that. So he has, I don't know what the percentage is. I'm just guesstimating, but I'm guessing it's less than 50% lung capacity for breathing. So that's why he has to have the tube in his throat to help him breathe. He's not on a ventilator or anything like that. It's just an oxygen tube. He doesn't have it up his nose anymore. He just has it down his throat. So he's doing a lot better. His mom and his son check on him all the time. They're always up there seeing him. He doesn't sound like he's in bad spirits. It's hard for him right now. So I'm asking everybody to continue to say their prayers. Keep Sean in your prayers this Christmas. Hopefully we can get him back in January. But as soon as we can, I'm going to have him on the show. Obviously, just talking about he gets to miss this entire season. It's amazing. But just getting him up to speed on what's going on in the world. But yeah, keep him in your prayers. Yeah, and thank you guys all for sticking with us tonight. I thought I was only going to have Brendan for a half hour, and I was able to con an hour out of him. Basically, I'm going to echo everything that Brendan said. The first team that scores 20 points is going to win this game. I think both defenses are terrible. As far as the Falcons are terrible defending the pass, the Saints aren't too good defending the run, especially when it comes to the Falcons' rushing attack with Cordell Patterson. If the Saints can control Patterson, keep him under wraps, and make Mariota stay in the pocket, or not Mariota, I'm sorry, make Ritter stay in the pocket and try and beat them with his arm, they should do well and should win this game. The Saints' challenge is to generate a running attack because they cannot win a game without being able to rush the football. And Taysom Hill is a Falcons killer. I want to see a lot of Taysom Hill in this game. I want to see a lot of Taysom Hill running the ball. I want to see Alvin Kamara getting space. This is a must-win game. not for the playoffs, not for better draft position or keep the Eagles from getting a better draft pick, but just because it's the Falcons. If we only win 2 games in a season, I want both those games against the Falcons because the bragging rights. Yeah, we stunk, but guess who we beat twice? I mean, that's what you want to be able to say to these guys. The Falcons were undefeated in 2012. We had a historically bad defense in 2012. No coaches because of Bounty Gate. Falcons come in undefeated. Guess who gives them their first loss? We do. It's just that's why you want to win this game. It's personal. It's not professional. It's not about, we might be able to make the playoffs because the Bucs suck and cards can fall a certain way and we could win the division at 6-10. I don't care about that. I just want to beat the Falcons because they're the Falcons. Okay? The Browns, it'll be fun to beat the Browns just because of Deshaun Watson. The Eagles, we're not going to win that game. But the only reason why I want to win that game against the Eagles is screw up the Eagles draft picks. But and you got to win against the Panthers because it's the Panthers and they're in the division. But the most important win for me right now is getting the Falcons. If we only win 1 game the rest of the year, I want to win this game. So I think that's the game. This is the game we've got to get. I'm still mad, though, in 2018. You realize if we'd have got the no call and we go to the Super Bowl, we win the Super Bowl. We win the Super Bowl in Atlanta Stadium. We were robbed of that. That pisses me off almost as much as losing because of the no call, because I wanted that. I wanted to lord it over the Falcons that, yeah, we won another Super Bowl in your stadium. And we were the home team. We were in your locker room. And we won the trophy that you couldn't win. That's why you do these things. So that's my feelings for this game. I've got too many bad memories of the Falcons, and this winning games like that help relieve that. So, absolutely, let's win this game. This game's the most important game of the season for me, and I hope it is for you too. So next week we get Bob back. It's Christmas week. So we'll talk about what could Santa bring the Saints, over the next few weeks, because hopefully we're celebrating another Saints win over the Falcons, and we'll talk about that. I think my good, bad, and ugly, my favorite column I ever wrote is going to come up in my Facebook memories soon. It's a Christmas Carol. I will reshare it in my memories. I'll try and reshare it in the Under the Dome Facebook page. If not, I'll read some segments of it to you guys. But it's probably my favorite good, bad, and ugly I've ever written. And it was one of those things that kind of came to me. The whole column just kind of wrote itself, and I was just jotting it down like dictation. It's a great one for Christmas. So I'll save that for next week. In the meantime, yeah, you're right about that. That would be great. And an offensive rookie of the year. That would be great too. And yeah, I still want revenge for 78 Big Ben, Grover Clemmer, and 79 opening day. Archie has a great first half and they collapse in the second half. I had that game, the highlights or lowlights of that game in the background too. But I want it for Deion Sanders. I want to win it because of the Dirty Bird dance in '98. I want to win just because I hate the Falcons. I really, really do. It's very few teams I can say I honestly hate. Falcons are one of them, So, yeah, that's what it would be. It would be the all-time record. We will have we tie it because that 54 game. I didn't tell you all this. I'll finish this up with this one. It's uneven because Well, obviously from 67 to 69, there was no such thing as the NFC West. We weren't in that division until the merger in 1970. But in 1982, the strike year, we only played 87. We only played one game. One of the games that was canceled in 87 was a Falcons game. There was also a Falcons game that was canceled in 82. In the other strike year, the 9 weeks they were off. And then the one game we did play, they beat the crap out of the Falcons. But it's off because of the playoff game. The one game lead they have is that 1991 playoff game. And if the Saints and the Falcons ever get in the playoffs together again, that is probably going to be the most intense playoff game I will ever personally witness, because it's now ratcheted up to such a level that's going to be like a mini Super Bowl, because the fans are going to want that game so badly. That 79 game I was just talking about, 10,000 Falcon fans. I mean, can you imagine? They don't even have 10,000 fans today, but 10,000 Falcon fans came to New Orleans to watch that game. So the intensity would be off the charts. That would be a very special moment to make up for that damn loss, because the whole secondary got hurt within the last few weeks of the season. The 91 season, Vince Buck had a neck injury. Torrey Cook broke his arm. I think Brett Maxey injured an ankle. They were signing guys off the street to play cornerback in that game. And here you're going to be against Jerry Glanville and his run and shoot offense with June Jones as his offensive coordinator. That was not, people were mad, but they weren't furious because they knew the Saints defense was hurt. But it was tough to lose to the Falcons that way. So anyway, not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about another Saints win over the Falcons. And we'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.